Brits don't whinge as much as you think. This sounds like I'm whinging saying this. Good morning and welcome back to a brand new video on the channel. Today we are going to be doing a video that we've had in the pipeline for quite a while. One that I'm excited about. It's potentially a bit controversial. We'll see. The video is going to be 10 misconceptions that Aussies may have about Brits. It's been a while since we've done one of these videos, so if you do enjoy them, please show your support, like the video so we know that you're enjoying it. And another point I want to say before we get into it, these videos, when we sit down and talk about these kind of concepts, are a bit of fun. I don't want anybody taking anything too serious, as well as certain people across Australia might know certain things that others don't. So let's just cover that. All of these 10 points might not relate to you, but these are things that we've faced or seen with certain people in Australia.
So point number one is the misconception that we all love the royal family. Now this is interesting because when we came to Australia, I found that a lot of Aussies wanted conversations with us about the royals that we didn't even know. They were asking questions to say like, oh, do you know this about the royal family?
Yeah.
Or what's going on at this time? And we were like, oh, we don't know, we don't really follow it. And I think
true.
maybe living in the north of England, you don't really interact with them as much potentially. Not too sure, not interact with them. Like you see them on
That's a common
walking
question.
down the
Yeah.
street. Maybe people think
Yeah.
that happens. It doesn't, it definitely doesn't.
It's a bit of a
But-
jokey thing, but when people have said to us like, oh, have you been to London? Did you see the Queen? Or have you seen
Yeah.
the royals? Like, that is a common thing that gets asked. It's the same way as like, you know, asking an Aussie, oh, have you had a fight with a kangaroo today? It's kind of like, no, that doesn't really happen.
Do you know what is interesting though? That the idea that me and you have only been to London once or twice.
Yeah.
I've been twice, you've been once.
Once.
Oh no, you've been for a football game. We've both been
Yeah,
twice.
yeah, twice. Yeah,
In our whole life.
I've never been through the city centre of London. That confuses people as well with how small the country is. I've been all over Europe. I've been so many different cities, but I've never actually been over like Tower Bridge, London Bridge. I've never looked at Big Ben or like I've never looked at, is it Victoria's Tower, I think? Buckingham Palace. I've never seen all of these things. The London Eye,
How
with my
crazy.
own eyes.
That's
I've never
crazy.
experienced that. And that is just because London's just a big bustling city. It's not my cup of tea to be in cities, so in turn, I've never really gone down unless it was for the football. So as Cody mentioned, the point isn't that we don't love the Royals as much as people think, but it's just we're a little bit indifferent. I think the younger generation in the UK, and especially as Cody mentioned as well, definitely regionally, it's maybe not as prevalent. So if you were in London every day and you were around the area, you would see the tourism that's coming through, the big red buses. That's something that isn't all around the UK, big red buses. People imagine that being in London or being in the UK. The same for like telephone boxes. All this kind of iconic iconography is more to do specifically with London and its aesthetic,
Yeah.
rather than us as a whole, as a country, especially where we're from. It isn't something that you would usually see tourists passing through and asking, oh, such and such about the Queen or this. It isn't something that comes up in our daily kind of life. So not the fact that we don't love them as such, it is more down to the point that it isn't something that comes up in our daily basis. It's like, I'm trying to think of a scenario. It's the same way that if somebody, I would imagine, came over from the UK for the first time, landed in Sydney, and then proceeded to ask every single person in Sydney or Melbourne how they feel about the daily struggles with crocodiles.
Yeah.
It isn't something
Yeah.
that happens for you, but if you went up to more of the northern regions and you spoke to the guys up in Northern Territory, you spoke to Northern Queenslanders in Kent, you know, you ask these people in these areas, what's it like if you were to go out? They're like, oh yeah, of course you have to be wary, and yeah, it is something that you have to be wary of. Melbourne, they might look at you a little bit confused. So yeah, similar kind of situation, and I hope that kind of clears it up. Point number 2 on the list is the fact, sticking with the royals, we all sound like the Queen. As you know, if you are a regular viewer of the channel, many people laugh at my accent. It is not your usual accent. I've got what would mainly and probably broadly be called a northern accent. Specifically, I'm kind of a mix between Manchester and Lancashire. My accent's a little bit more broad and pronounced, I would say, than Cody's. Cody kind of is able to speak quite well, I would say, whereas I sound like I should be banging a little caveman hammer. But in the UK, there are around about, I think they said, between 40 to 50 different regional accents. These are accents that are kind of broadly regionalised, but if you broke it down into subcategories, mine and Cody's accent as a whole would be classed as the same, as Cody is from Wigan, I am from Bolton. But if you were from each town, people from our towns, even though 5 minutes away, you would say words different to people from where I'm from, and people would recognise and go, you're from Wigan, or you're from Bolton. Like, when I've been in Cody's town with her family and people, they go, oh no, you're not with him from Bolton. They know from the accent certain words.
And it's 5 minutes down the road.
5 minutes down the road.
Literally 5-10 minutes down the road. It's not far.
Very odd. One of the key words that would stand out is there is a dish in the UK called potato ash. I call it tater ash, and you would call it lobby. So 5 minutes away, and already you're seeing differences in the accents and words that we would use and say. So when it comes to sounding like the Queen has an RP accent, which is received pronunciation, and she speaks like that. Hello. Very nice accent. Sadly, I've not got that. I sound like I've been eating gravel for breakfast. Different accents like Brummie, Scouse, Glaswegian, some of these broad accents that even people from within the UK would struggle to understand. So yeah.
That's true. I always say that I struggle with a Scottish accent. It sounds incredible, but I don't always know what they're saying.
Yeah.
So that's pretty interesting that I'm northern and Scotland's just a bit above us and I can't understand Scottish.
It's very
crazy.
Funny. Very funny.
Point number 3 is the misconception that it rains consistently in the UK. Now, I must say, it rains a lot in the UK. It's pretty drizzly a lot of the time. However, in the most southern parts of England, I definitely would say it's pretty nice compared to up north.
Yeah.
And I think, isn't there a fact about there being more rain in Sydney per calendar year than there is in
Kent.
In Kent?
I think it's in Kent.
Ah,
yes.
Okay.
So there will obviously be a lot of different comparisons between certain spots, but for the size of the UK, you would imagine that the weather doesn't vary too much, but it really does. If you're at the top end of Scotland, you're probably going to get a lot more higher rainfall than somewhere like Cornwall.
Of course.
So there is a big variation in your location, your geographic spot in the UK of how much rain you're going to get.
Yeah, I would say that it's definitely more rainy in the northwest England where we are compared to, say, some southern parts.
Yeah.
And it is pretty dismal and drizzly in a lot of areas, but then others not, so yeah.
I think what is really funny is, even though the point is that it isn't as rainy as people might suspect, that is in other parts of the UK compared to where we live. It is particularly rainy, it's particularly drizzly. You do get a lot more overcast days, so that is maybe a common misconception. The fact that you're grey skies. Like I said, this is a bad example because where we're from, it does rain quite a lot. To the point that I believe Granada Studios, who are ITV, basically a channel in the UK, like Channel 7 over here, they set up their studios back in the day in Manchester specifically, as they realised a lot more people would be inside watching television in Manchester as it rains a lot more. So, it kind of goes against our point that we're saying that a TV studio is set up in our town for that reason. On that point, maybe a common misconception that it is going to be consistently rainy everywhere in the UK. Point number 4 on the list, talking about kind of going with the stereotype, the point will be that not all Brits are obsessed with drinking tea daily. I'm a bad example of this. I will probably have about 2 or 3 cups of tea here, living in Australia for a year. I do follow the stereotype, but that isn't the truth for every Brit. A lot more Brits do drink coffee in the younger generations, as is the same here. When we're out and about, we would now go for a coffee. Whereas if we were going to a cafe in the UK, we would more likely get a cup of tea.
We used to get the teapots, didn't we, in the
little
UK?
Teapots and have a little scone and, is it scone? Scone? I don't know what people say out here, but I say scone.
Controversial.
Because it's the correct term. Fastest cake in the world. But in regards to drinking tea, there are a lot of people in the UK that are not fans of cups of tea. So they would rather have probably a glass of wine than a cup of tea, to be honest, in the UK. That seems like what people would have more than anything. But there is a large percentage of the population who, when you speak to, will be like, I've never had a cup of tea, I don't like cups of tea, I've tried it, it's not for me. More than you would think.
More than you would think,
More than you would think.
And you do realise we went on a whale tour here recently in Australia, and the lady was German, and we were asking for a cuppa, and she was like, so how do you have your tea? Is it like just black or with or what? Because some people have it with milk, without milk. Like the idea of a cup of tea is very different to everybody, isn't it?
It is a big part of the culture, so to say that it doesn't exist would be a complete lie, but it might shock you that not every Brit is obsessed with cups of tea.
And also, it's the same with scones.
Yes.
So, like, my mum, for example, I don't think my mum's really had a scone. She doesn't really eat those. Where we used to go to cafes, we would get a teapot and a scone. But not everybody would. Like, some people have never ate them. So, like, I know when you come here, it seems like a very British thing, a scone, I think, for Aussies. But, yeah, they're not... Yeah, not everyone eats them. The next point is about how the UK isn't all quaint movie set villages like some people might think if they haven't been there before. What I mean by this, we've got beautiful locations like the Cotswolds, very film set, kind of quaint, tiny roads, beautiful old stony properties. They're very dark, small windows, small doors.
Yeah, North Wales has quite a few villages like this,
yeah,
doesn't it? Yorkshire has quite a few as well.
Chester has some, but there's also a lot in between that isn't like that. That's just kind of standard brick houses. They're everywhere in the UK. Whether it's brick, like what we would call like a council house, or whether it's a private kind of on a private estate. They still that red brick is heavily used, isn't it? Throughout the whole line. Yeah, maybe obviously again we spent more time in the northwest. So that might not be the same for everywhere, but what we know, it's definitely like that, isn't it?
This point was added to the list after speaking to one of our friends who had recently just visited the UK, and they turned around to us and said, it just shocked me how many social housing estates there were across the UK as we travelled round, and they're all so consistent looking. They're interwoven into these kind of small tight areas. Block houses next to one another, especially in your lower economical areas. But it isn't something that you really see as much where we live or in other spots in Australia. I know in certain areas like Sydney and Melbourne, obviously these social houses will exist, but I think the sheer extent kind of shocked maybe a couple of Aussies that we've spoken to who've gone over and gone, oh, wasn't aware. I think on the last count that I knew, social housing numbers were 3.76 million at the end of 2023 in the UK. So that is a lot of houses when you think about it. That is touching 4 million in 2023. Wow. We're probably closer to around about into the 4 million region now of those houses in the UK. So it might shock you that there is as many when you go over, and the villages aren't as quaint and dainty as you would imagine. There's a lot more kind of built up areas, even in semi-rural places. Point number 6 on the list, I can already hear the comments are going, it is that Brits don't whinge as much as you think. This is gonna get people commenting. This sounds like I'm whinging saying this.
I feel like we're Brits and we've been a good example of not whinging too much.
We don't whinge.
We don't whinge.
Why are you always saying we whinge? We never whinge. Oh wait, I've just caught myself in the act. No, as a joke, we're taking the mickey, we're having the Michael on. It isn't true. Obviously, it's in British culture to be self-deprecating. I think that is one of the big differences that I do notice between Aussies and Brits. Brits are a lot more, as a culture, pessimistic, I would say. Yeah. A little bit more, not introverted, but definitely in a social situation, Brits self-deprecate and point the joke at themselves more than Aussies do. Now, this isn't saying that there's anything wrong with it, and I love that Aussies are a little bit more upbeat and they feel a bit more impassioned to, you know, when something is positive. It sounds crazy to say it, but Brits might not say that something's as positive. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I know what you mean.
It's a very odd kind of point to encapsulate, but it is something living here for a year that we have noticed. Yeah. Aussies are a lot more...
They have like a lot of banter.
A lot of banter, yeah.
It is like the self-deprecating aspect of things where I think Aussies can get confused, like what's wrong, like they think there's something wrong, or... You know, and it's just the again, even if
that's true. I think when you might be self-deprecating, Aussies are like, oh, that's a bit of a negative outlook. But in British culture, I think we innately do that to kind of not feel like we're bragging as much.
I'm not sure. It's just the way.
There's a social construct in that one that's completely for another day. But jumping back onto the point that we whinge, I love that Aussies do have this back and forth banter and this kind of friendly relationship. To me, I find it endearing. Now, I can't speak on behalf of all Brits, I know me and Cody, we're used to being the clowns, we're used to kind of, you know, not knowing everything, and I don't mind not knowing everything. I think floating through life pretending that I knew everything, I'd start to annoy myself, wouldn't I? I don't know everything, I hardly know anything. So, the way that you keep your mind open, asking questions, being friendly, being bubbly, I love the fact that you can go into a scenario, and it's a joke that I've heard a few times. Aussies, you'll know if you've commented it, the joke that, how do you know when you've got a plane full of poms, when the engines stop whining or whinging, then you can still hear it because the poms are on the plane whinging. That is the concept of the joke. It's funny. The fact that it is such a cultural thing that a joke has been made about it, I love that there is this back and forth banter. I can take it. If you see me in the streets, if you see me around, you can point and laugh at me. It's all well and good, I can take it.
Point number 7 is that all British food is boiled and bland. Now, I think this was definitely the case back in the day, but these days, even in the last, I'd say, 20 years, England as a whole has developed as a lot in terms of cuisines. I think like the Thai cuisines come into England a lot more than it once was. And obviously we've got our friends Terry and Julie that left the UK over 20 years ago. And they said that before they left, they never remember seeing any like Thai food. And they have obviously here, and they still didn't really know if there were Thai food in the UK. They were like, is it common? Is it not?
Yeah, that was a genuine question.
You know, that was a genuine question that you got to think about. So it has definitely developed. And I don't know if you guys know, have a guess at what you think the national dish is of England. Have a guess. Oh.
I feel like some people might know this, but it shocks some that don't.
I agree. You'd think maybe fish and chips, or maybe a cottage pie or something like that.
Yeah.
It's actually chicken tikka masala, which has become its own British dish, hasn't it? It's not an Indian dish, it's just its own thing.
I think it was
full of sugar and salt.
It was either made in Scotland, I think, or Birmingham. It was one of the two that it was basically made by a chef in the UK to make a dish that was a little bit more palatable for the Brits who were struggling with maybe the hotter curries at the time. And that is the thing.
Does that mean that's a whinging pom? Were they
Poms
whinging?
were whinging about it.
They were whinging. They were whinging to make it suit their palate.
Maybe I was wrong. We might have to go back and scrub a point
off.
But on that point, I do think that Indian cuisine within the UK is very much to a British palate and has developed its own unique taste and flavour profile, and the spices that are in are maybe toned down. I think that would maybe be a way to describe it, toned down, a little bit sweeter, not as spicy. But if you were to go to India and try and order these dishes aren't as comparable, they're not the same.
Different.
Even us ordering a dish over here is very different to the UK. So in regards to British dishes, although it comes from Indian culture, it has been developed into its own dish in its own right. So in regards to British cuisine, yes, it might not be the most flavourful, but there are some good dishes, and I think as a cuisine overall, from beef Wellington to cheese and onion pie, oh my goodness.
I need to make a cheese and onion pie.
We do need to make a cheese and onion pie. I think a lot of it is to do with where you are. On those cold, rainy nights, if you find in an autumn or a winter's evening when it's very chilly and you've done a dog walk, you're all wrapped up, if you found a good gastro pub that does a delicious meal to warm you up, it's very much of the culture. There is not many English dishes that I've felt like having when I've been sat on a beach, I'll admit. They're quite stodgy, they're quite carb heavy. If you're looking for a winter warmer to warm you up maybe on a cold day after a dog walk or after being out in the chilliness, there's something about them that, I don't know, you might have to try if you're there in the winter. Point number 8 on the list is that Brits love football. When I say football, going to be controversial here, we're talking English football.
Soccer.
I'm not even going to say the word. Whilst we're speaking about it, I refuse. If we're going to call it Aussie football, then we'll call this one English football, just to help split it and understand it. Not every Brit is obsessed with football.
No.
There is a lot of people, including a lot of people in my family, that have no interest until that World Cup comes around. The football's on all year round in the UK. You've got your club teams, you've got your Premier League, which is your top of the line. Everybody's watching it, everybody's interested in it who's interested in football, English football. But there are a lot of people, as there are around the world, you're looking at your Americans, they don't really care until the World Cup comes around. You've got the same, I imagine, with Aussies. A lot of them would get a lot more interested in the English football when it feels wrong saying English football, doesn't it? Because it's the world's game, everybody plays it. A lot of Aussies maybe aren't too interested in football when it is the league stuff. Until that World Cup comes around, they might follow AFL teams religiously and then follow the Socceroos or follow the Matildas? Follow the Matildas when they're in a big competition. And that makes sense. National pride, seeing your team. It's like the Olympics, supporting them on. So it may come as a shock that there are a large percentage of the British population that have no interest. Take my sister, for example. She's grown up around a football family, but if I was to honestly ask her the offside rule, I don't think she would know anything about it. And there are a lot of people like that. So it might sound silly, but the first thing when people speak to me, luckily I am an English football fan, Aussie guys will come up to me and go, "Who's your team?" So there would be people I know back in the UK that don't follow it. Now this is regional as well. There are people in certain areas like Codystown, Wigan. There is a football team there, but more people might follow the rugby in places like St Helens.
Yeah.
These towns, these northern towns that would follow rugby league, the same way that over here, Queenslanders are more likely to watch rugby league than they are to watch AFL, and the same for the guys down in, I think, is it Victoria?
Yeah.
Melbourne. I think that's where your AFL maybe got a bigger stronghold. So, very similar, the two countries in their sports.
Point number 9 is that Brits don't like the sun. Now, there's definitely a huge misconception on this, and I actually think that there's more Australians that dislike the sun than Brits, mainly because Brits are definitely misinformed and not so much uneducated. It's just we're not very aware of the sun. We're not very conscious of the sun as a whole country.
We don't get enough of it.
The sun.
We don't get enough of it.
When the sun comes out in the UK, to start with, the UV levels are a lot lower in the UK, just as they are all over Europe compared to Australia. So when the sun does come out, yes, you do see people walking around with no t-shirts on. It's not a good look. But it does happen. As soon as the sun is shining, people do sit and bake in the sun for long periods of time, which again isn't something that's very sun smart, not something that you see happening here that often unless it's tourists. But yeah, I think that's the issue. I think they do love the sun. If anything, they love it too much, so they definitely don't they definitely don't dislike the sun. But yeah, whether it's a good thing or not, I'm not sure.
It takes me back to one of the times we went to Australia Zoo. And we were speaking to one of the keepers there, and we got quite friendly, and we're having a joke with her. She was Aussie, and she turned round and said, "There is one way that you can always spot a definite British tourist, and that is that the fact they'll be going round the zoo without a shirt on, and they'll look like a lobster." And she was like, "You can guarantee that if you see somebody that looks like a lobster without a shirt on, you ask them to go and put the shirt on, and the accent that you get back is a British accent."
I would love to know what ways you would say you'd know, like you can spot seeing a Brit. So how can you spot seeing a Brit, like in Australia? How do you know they're British? Comment below and let us know. I'd love to know that.
Future video there, I think. I think another one's socks and sandals. Maybe we'll have to get a couple of these ideas down. Let us know and we'll mention you when we get round to that video. And the last point on the list, point number 10, is that Brits are obsessed with queuing. This is a weird one, and it is kind of known in the UK that we queue a lot more, and there's queue etiquette or there's queue culture, or we're not too fussed about queuing. But if you were to push in the UK, oh my giddy, you are in for a world of trouble. And you know what it is? It's not even, people probably wouldn't even have a go at you as such as they'd be glaring at you. They'd be giving you one of these.
Giving you the side eye.
How dare you?
The death stare.
You know we love to queue more than anything. Honestly, when Brits go to theme parks, they're not even bothered about the rides. They just want to get in those queues and queue all day. No, that's not true. That's not true. When it comes to queuing etiquette and culture, I don't even fully know where this actually comes from. If anybody actually knows the history on this relating to Brits, it is an interesting one. I didn't think it was too dissimilar to any other country, but maybe there is a bit.
Is it because there's more people in the country? Like we're used to queuing, like, let's say for example traffic. Traffic in Australia I know is bad. I'm sure Sydney, Melbourne, Brisbane is terrible. But in the UK it's particularly bad, especially in places like London. It is just a car park, isn't it?
Yeah.
And maybe just, are people used to waiting around? Is it just in the, I don't know, I don't think that's the case.
I think it's a cultural
thing. Patience thing?
I think it's a cultural thing more than population density, because there are a lot more countries that are more densely populated than the UK.
Yeah.
And at the same time, you don't hear about these countries having a queuing etiquette. So I think it maybe is something culturally that is within Brits to kind of stiff up a lip, don't say anything. It's similar to the point when we were saying, if you've got a problem, be self-deprecating or don't really mention it.
Yeah.
It's not the healthiest mindset, but it does come out in certain cultural ways. For example, as Cody mentioned, when you're driving, there has been a few scenarios where there has been somebody at a give way line and us driving, and even though you're not turning into where they're coming from, innately, as you drive, weirdly, even if it's your right of way, Brits would stop and be like, flash the headlights and be like, go on, you can go. And we've kind of slowed down a few times to do it, and people don't go as often. They wait till, if you're at a give way in Australia, you give way.
Yeah.
Whereas in the UK, you would kind of be like, hey, go on, I don't mind being behind you. I don't know.
It doesn't really make sense to be honest, the way like we do it in the UK, because if anything, it probably causes more confusion
slowing it down,
and slowing it down. But
it's on that culture of queuing maybe, or being behind somebody. It's not as weird. I don't know. Maybe it doesn't relate to queuing, but if anybody does have a little bit of a better understanding of why Brits love to queue or where the stereotype comes from, let us know. But I didn't think it was a thing. Maybe it is. Picco, you won't come back? We've got an outro to film, Picco. Take your time.
Come on. And that has been all of our 10 points wrapped up for this video today. We do hope that you enjoyed these, and let us know if there's any other points that you feel that we could cover in potentially a future video. Also, let us know if you do like this type of content. We know that some of you do, so please do let us know, because it's much appreciated by liking the video or just making sure that you drop us a comment and stay engaged. We love to read your comments and reply back to you, as we always mention. And we have to say, there is very exciting news.
We have only got 4 days till my mum lands in Australia for the first time, and I cannot wait to see her little face arrive. And by little, I mean little. She's smaller than Cody. Honestly, she's pocket size. We can slip her in the top pocket. There will be a lot of small jokes coming her way. I'm going to be surrounded by little people.
You sure
little
are.
people.
There's nothing wrong with that.
Little mum, little you. I'll be, hey guys, we're out. Oh, you're all here. But I'm very excited to see her. I can't wait for her to come over. We've only just said our goodbyes to Cody's family when they were over, and now my mum's coming over. So we have got this video that you're watching right now, one video after this, and then the video after that will be my mum arriving in Australia.
Oh, make sure to stay tuned for that, guys. It's going to be super exciting because Joel's mum actually arrives in the daylight, whereas our other family members have arrived late at night. So that's going to be a different perspective. We're going to have to keep her awake to keep her in check with the time zone thing. So we'll see how we get on with that one. But thank you very much for watching. Thank you to the members. You guys are fantastic. We love you very much. Lots of loves and kisses from Picco. And we will see you in the next one. Bye.
Adios. I'll grab this one.